Hey, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Unlocking Excellence with your main man, Coach Eric Schwefel. What's going on, y'all? I hope you're having a great day so far. I am super excited about today. We're going to have a great episode. It's going to be so exciting. I have my first female guest, and we figured out that what we're going to be talking about and then the month, they correlate with each other. So without further ado, Miss Sara Delancy, I'm so excited that you're here today.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm honored, and I'm excited. I don't know. Can't wait.
It's going to be, I am too. So Sara and I, so y'all who are listening, Sara and I, we met, oh my gosh, it's been like 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. We met a while ago.
Yeah.
It was a local gym here in Slidell. We started training together. I want to say that you were group, and then Jason came in, or maybe it was you first, and then Jason came in, and then the boys, they came and they trained a little while in and out. And just so y'all know, she's a boy mom. She's a work at home mom. She's married, and we're going to hear about her whole story today. So enough about me talking. Sara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. So yes, my name is Sara Delancy. I live in Slidell, Louisiana. I am married to my high school crush, Jason Delancy. We met in Spanish class. He was a cute upperclassman at Slidell High, and we've been married for 18 years. Yes, 18 years. And we have 2 boys. They are, Evan is 14. He's a freshman at North Shore. And Carter is a 7th grader at Boyette. He's 12 years old.
Man, I saw pictures the other day on Facebook that you have a high schooler now. That's nuts.
I know. I do that all the time. I looked at him yesterday and I was like, oh my gosh, not only do you need to shave that mustache, but you have like chin hairs now too. I don't understand this, but yeah.
It's happening, Mom. It's
teenagers.
Happening. Yeah. I know, right? What's it real quick before we dive in? What's it like having teenage boys? You have a house full of.
It's disgusting. Yeah, I do. I have 2 dogs that are both male too. It's like living in a frat house, especially during COVID, like I wasn't winning Mom of the Year, making them go to bed early or anything like that. Frankly, I didn't care if they stayed up all night long while they weren't in school, because that meant I could work uninterrupted in the morning because they'd sleep late. So they'd get up and eat in the middle of the night and leave the dirty dishes for me. So yeah, it's never a dull moment, but yeah. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, I can imagine, growing up, Mom is there, Mom's going to take care of it. And you got the boys there and you do your best to tell them, but men, it goes through our ears one ear and then right out the other. It's like, oh, I remember you saying that. But that's all that happens. So good luck to you. And
thank you. I'm going to need it.
So it's going to be a good time. Never a dull moment.
It's never a dull moment.
So today we are going to kind of dive in and we're going to reflect on what unlocking excellence means to you. We're going to hear a bit about your story and then how you've grown and how things have changed. And then kind of what unlocking excellence means now, right? Because when we change, our definition of excellence can change. So if you don't mind, I'll just hand it over to you and you can tell us about your story and kind of how things develop from there.
Okay. So if we're talking about unlocking excellence, I'll start with in January of 2019, instead of choosing a New Year's resolution that I probably wouldn't have stuck with like the rest of the world, I chose to live out a scripture that spoke to me. And I chose Matthew 5:16, which says, be a light for all the world to see. Basically summarizing it, be a light to others and point them towards God by your actions. So that was how I started out last year. And when I picked that scripture, I had my work family in mind mostly. I felt like that's where I could be a light, most predominantly.
Yeah.
I work for a major insurance company in the claims industry. It's very stressful, very demanding. You never run out of work to do. It's difficult. I feel like every day is a marathon.
Yeah.
And in my role, there, I consult with a lot of adjusters and talk to them. And sometimes it's not always an easy conversation to have. So, I wanted to be a positive role model for my coworkers. So that's really who I had in mind when I wanted to be a light. And of course I was going to do that in, all areas of my life, but that's why I picked it. So fast forward a few months into the spring of 2019, and I noticed a lump under my right arm. And, I knew that you had lymph nodes under your arm, and, sometimes if you have an infection or a virus, your lymph nodes will swell. So I just mentioned it to my husband, and I was like, you see this? And it was really pronounced. Like when I raised my arms over my head, I could see it in the mirror. And if I looked at the other side, there was not one to match. So I'm like, well, something's off here. Yeah. So I decided that I would give it a month, and if it was still there, then I would go to the doctor about it. So it didn't go anywhere. So right after Easter, I called my OBGYN, and she had me come into the office right away. And she's been my doctor since, I was a teenager. So we have a long history, doctor-patient. I've never had any medical issues, like when I go to a doctor's appointment and they have you fill out all that paperwork about your prior medical history. I just go no all the way down. I've never had anything.
I might have a few questions to interject. Yeah. When you saw that the lump there, was there any pain, or do you just notice that there was that imbalance?
No pain. Like I was shaving in the shower when I noticed it. But again, it was pretty pronounced. Like you could see it. And you're supposed to start having mammograms when you turn 40. And I was 41 last year. I had not had my first mammogram. I wasn't planning to not have it. It wasn't something I intentionally pushed off. I knew that I needed to get around to it. But I don't have a family history of breast cancer, so I didn't feel the urgency. I knew that I would be taking care of it soon, but it just hadn't happened yet. So I go see my doctor to have her check it, and she was very concerned, and she said, I don't like this. You need to take this order and get the first available appointment for a diagnostic mammogram. So the tone of her voice scared me, every other time I've seen her, it's been easygoing, more time catching up personally than, having to talk about anything, too much with my medical history. Right. So it scared me. But, I did what she said. Yeah. And it took about 2 weeks to get that appointment. Because I had to have an appointment where the interventional radiologist would be available to talk to me. So a lot of times when you go get an x-ray or a mammogram, there's a doctor reading those things in the background, or maybe even at another location, and they're not available to come in and sit with you and talk to you about what they saw. So I needed that to be the case for that appointment. So I had the mammogram, and there's a few things I'll quote while we talk, and I'll tell you my story that I distinctly remember. And so one thing that I remember from this visit was when I met the radiologist, he told me, quote, "It's a coin toss. It could be something like cancer, or it could be nothing, but we need to do a biopsy to look into it further." So I always remember that word, coin toss. So fast forward to do a biopsy, and it was somewhat inconclusive, and I had to do another one. Right before I got the biopsy results, I was due to go on family vacation. It was right at the beginning of June. We had this trip scheduled for about a year. And so we were looking forward to it, and I was not going to get the results before we went on the trip. Sure. But I had decided that even if I was going to get the results right before we went on the trip, I didn't want to know. Like, I wanted to go on the vacation we had planned for a year and enjoy it. Yeah. And whatever it was, we could deal with it when I got home. Yeah. So got home from vacation, beginning of June, go into my surgeon's office, and he's like, "We have bad news. You have breast cancer. You're going to need a mastectomy and chemo and possibly radiation." And it was like it felt like getting hit by a Mack truck. I don't really remember much after mastectomy. Like I was actually more scared of the surgery than cancer.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So like, real quick, there's a whole bunch of different feelings that you're going through. There's a whole bunch of thinking that's
Mm-hmm.
happening right now. You know, the doctor says it's a coin toss, and then the first biopsy happens. So, you know, most people are just nervous in between right when that's being said, and then you got to get the second test. So you already put through this whirlwind, this hurricane being in the South, this hurricane of thoughts, emotions, what could it be, what could it not be, and then now you kind of have it. And then, you know, to use your words, I couldn't think of anything better either, like getting hit with a Mack truck. And so it was more about the surgery. Why I'm curious, why so much the surgery than the actual diagnosis?
I've thought about that a lot, actually. So I think it's a couple things. One, because I had never had surgery before. And so someone's telling me, like, basically, you know, in not so many words, we're going to amputate your breast, you know, like, and I guess the reason, and I'm a big weenie about needles and, you know, surgery. I mean, I have low blood pressure. I've been known to faint when I've got my finger pricked. Like, I'm just not really scared of needles, but I don't know. I guess I just get myself worked up about it. So the thought of having a major surgery scared me. But the other thing was, like, breast cancer is so common now. Like, I know way more survivors than I know, you know, women that have succumbed to the cancer. So in my mind, I felt like, oh, well, I mean, this is breast cancer, you know, like I wasn't necessarily downplaying it, but I was like, well, whatever it is, it will work it out. Because again, I was telling myself, I don't have a family history. Yeah, I'm healthy. I don't have anything else going on. So, you know, I was optimistic slash denial slash faithful. I just, it was like some combination of all of that.
And it's almost like the perfect concoction. I heard recently from one of my coaches that he had a client, or he was told a story where it was a similar situation. There were two patients who were given the same diagnosis, and it was something along the lines of, like, they had a 25% survival rate, and the doctor said they should get their affairs together. Well, one client took it very seriously. They begin to get their affairs together, and within a matter of months, they pass. Whereas the other patient said, oh, 25% chance. That's a great, you know, I still have 25%. And then they started working, and they had a better mindset, and they were able to make it so much longer. So I think that's huge and important to have. One, I know more survivors than I do those who haven't made it through, so I can make it through, right? I'm already a healthy person. I don't have this history, so you're putting yourself in a good state. And I think I'd put myself in denial too, because it's like, this is not going to happen. I don't accept this particular outcome for me. I can make a different outcome for myself. Yeah, that's huge. So please continue.
Okay. So in hindsight, I've thought about this just the other day. Like, there was only one time during my journey that I was fearful that I would not make it. And I'll get to that in a minute. But like, I was so optimistic / in denial / faithful throughout the process that I didn't really understand how serious everything that I was going through was when I was going through it. Like, it wasn't until I was done when I was like, wow, that was some pretty serious, scary stuff, you know? But I had no idea. I was just kind of like, okay, you say I got to do chemo, I'll do chemo. You say I got to do radiation, I'll do radiation. So I'm like a fixer, you know? I'm like, give me the plan, tell me what we're going to do, and I'll start doing the things you say. So that was actually one of the life lessons that I got out of this, was plans change, and you have to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
That was really one of the hardest things about all of this. So, you know, I get the diagnosis at the beginning of June, and my doctors, you know, I have a medical team. I've got a surgeon, I've got a medical oncologist, I've got a radiation oncologist, and a plastic surgeon. So I saw all of them within 1 week of my diagnosis. So I was really impressed by that. And initially the plan was for me to have a double mastectomy and then have chemo and radiation. So I wrapped my head around all of that, and I'm like, okay, I've got cancer. This is the plan. Okay, we're going to do that. So that all took about a month. So I'm going into what I think is the appointment to schedule surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And my surgeon, I could tell as soon as he came in the room, something was going to change. And so he was like, yeah. So we've been talking, we as in your medical team, and we think that you should do chemo first to shrink the tumors so that there's a better chance that we get all of the cancerous cells. We don't want to leave any behind, and I'm not confident with the size of your tumor if we were to do surgery first that we would get everything. So we want you to do chemo first. So that was like my first kick in the gut after being diagnosed,
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. So I didn't really do well with plans changing, but it is what it is. So
that's one of the biggest, that's a huge lesson right there in and of itself. And I'm kind of starting to see like the connection between the initial intention that you had right at the beginning of the year with the Bible verse with Matthew, was it 5:6 and
16,
5:16, and how it's kind of going, right? Because you want to represent and be a representative of God and the light, and then things, his plans are much different than our plans, and things can change in an instant. And it's like, well, I had things going this way. It's like, well, that's not the way things are anymore. So we've got to pivot and shift real quick. And it sounds like you were, I mean, obviously we're sitting here together, so you were able to do that. So that was the first kick in the gut. And then so y'all went with the radiation first?
So I started with chemo. I got a port put in my chest, and I got IV chemo. My plan was to have chemo 6 times every 3 weeks. So I would go in, get the chemo, and it took about 3 to 4 hours to get it. And I would have like a friend or a family member come with me to each appointment. So I called those chemo dates. And I, it was just really nice to have like uninterrupted time, with my chemo date. And that was like my husband, my mom, my mother-in-law, close friends. So it was really nice. I lost my hair about a month after I started chemo. That was probably my second kick in the gut. When I knew that I would lose my hair, I made light of it. I was like, I'm going to lose my hair. I just really didn't think it was going to be as hard on me as it was. And I don't think you can really understand that until you go through it. But like when I knew that I was going to lose it, I would joke with my older son, saying, oh, well, since I'm not working, I was out of work on leave of absence. I'm going to come to your school with a purple wig on and wear a shirt that says Evan's mom, and he was mortified by the fact that I would, even think about doing that. But when I did lose my hair, it was like, it made it all very real, because even though I was optimistic and positive, I could no longer deny the fact that I was going through this, because there was an outward projection of, yes, you're a cancer patient, so that was tough.
And it's really a rock at your identity and who you believe that you were when you see this person in the mirror. And it's like, I know this is me, but at the same time, this is not me. And I can't imagine going through it. So and it ended up being would you say that's kind of the first real realization that you had of the severity of what you went through? Yeah.
It absolutely is, because I felt pretty good most of the time. I was going through treatment. I would feel bad, the first few days after chemo, but then I had a 3-week stretch between infusions. So I would get an infusion on a Thursday, and then by Monday I was pretty much feeling back to myself. But once I lost my hair, I couldn't go anywhere without someone asking me, how are you doing? What's going on? And it was all coming from a good place, but it's not something you want to talk about every time you leave your house. Like, I'm still Sarah, I'm still Jason's wife, I'm still Evan and Carter's mom. Cancer, I wasn't going to let it define me. And it was very hard initially. So that was really how I decided to be a light, and kind of shift it with cancer, since I wasn't in my office, with my coworkers, decided to write a CaringBridge journal, which is like a social media website for medical situations. I had never experienced cancer personally with a family member or close friend. So I really didn't know what it was going to look like. So I felt like I took control of how I could communicate with friends and family about how I was doing. And I really kind of directed them to read my updates on there, so that I didn't have to field, multiple text messages and calls and emails and that sort of thing, repeating the same thing over again, because it's emotionally exhausting. So I was able to write journals about, like practical updates, and also how I was feeling and how, share pictures and that sort of thing. So.
And what a great way to kind of give a one and done, right? Because not only is this a really big realization for you, and it's something that is difficult to accept and go through, but when you have other people who are reinforcing this belief of not necessarily for you, but I want to be there for you, I want to know about your situation, then it almost sinks into your own identity, if you let it, that you have this poor me, or that this thing is defining me, but you didn't even let that happen, where the cancer defined you. And I read a few on, I don't know if you could call it a blog, but on the platform that you used, and a lot of those were open and vulnerable shares. So much appreciated that you could find the words to write that out and then communicate it. Because shit, I mean, I know I wasn't as vocal during that time, but I was reading, making sure, like, just checking up and seeing, how's she doing? Like, 'cause I care about somebody. So that's a really good way. So it kind of gave you the opportunity to reflect, to put it into words, and then to let everybody know how you're doing without having to focus on it all the time, I would imagine.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So I do 3 of those 6 chemo infusions. And after the 3rd one, I'm at an appointment with my doctor, my medical oncologist, and he's checking to see if the tumors are shrinking. So he's doing a physical exam, and, he's concerned that they haven't shrunk just by his physical exam. And I was like, oh, I know my body better than him. It's shrinking. Like, again, optimism, denial. What do you want to call it? But I was like, I don't know. I think it's shrinking. And he's like, I feel like it should have shrunk, but more than this by now.
Yeah.
Let's have you do an ultrasound so that we can compare it to the one that you had before you started treatment, and see if, the measurements have changed. So
actually get metrics rather than going off the feel. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I do that ultrasound, and I got a call from my medical oncologist at about 5:30 on a weeknight. And he's like, we have some bad news. It's not shrinking, it's grown. And we're going to need to stop chemo, and you're going to need to have a mastectomy right away, because we need to cut out as much as possible to stop the spread. So I was like, I don't know, what are we on? That's my 3rd kick in the gut. It was definitely a change of plans again. Like, here it is. I'm thinking I'm doing what you're asking me to do, and plans change again. So, so I had a mastectomy on my right breast, not both. A lot of people ask me why not both. I wanted to have both removed, but my surgeon and my medical oncologist strongly discouraged it. Again, another quote that sticks out in this journey came from my surgeon, and he's like, this is to save your life. We can't, if we remove your left breast and there's no cancer in there, if there's a complication, if there's an infection, anything to keep you from getting back on track to cancer treatment, getting back to chemo, another drug, that could delay that. And we're trying to save your life right now. So
removing the left breast could delay.
If there were any complications on the other side that doesn't have cancer, that would possibly delay me getting back to going to treatment and getting rid of the cancer. So,
okay.
So I had just my right breast removed where the cancer was. And I guess maybe to clarify for your listeners, like breast cancer doesn't travel from one breast to the other. Like you know, if I had it on the left side, that would be a completely separate, different cancer.
Right.
So there was no concern that it could move to the other side. If I ended up with breast cancer over there, that would be like a completely new cancer.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. So I had surgery. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And about a month after surgery, I had a follow-up PET scan. And a PET scan is like a full body scan to check for cancer throughout your body. So after I had that PET scan, I got a call from my doctor, and he said it's completely clear. There's no evidence of cancer.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was amazing.
Yeah. That is a huge breath of relief. That is just like, now, I mean, I can only imagine like how excited everybody was, and yourself hearing that. Was it kind of a surreal moment, you know, when you were told that you had it? It was like a Mack truck and you were getting hit. So what did this feel like in order to hear those words?
It felt like, and I didn't even realize it at the time, but it felt like I had an elephant standing on my chest and they had just gotten off. Like, I don't know, you know, I never walked around feeling that pressure, but the sense of relief that came from hearing that was just indescribable. So I got that call. I was actually driving when my doctor called me, and I had to pull over and compose myself. And I called Jason, my husband, and I told him, and I'm like, apparently I delayed like my conversation. I was like, you know, Dr. McKelvin just called me, and he told me my PET scan results, and I didn't like finish that sentence fast enough for him. And he's like, what are they? But I was so emotional. And so I have never heard him cry like that. Like just the sense of relief coming out of him. Like I didn't know he was carrying so much around, you know, like until I told him that, you know. So it was really awesome.
And he's a great guy. Like I know the listeners that are here right now, I know both of them. I got to train with Jason and Sarah for a while, and Jason's he's a really caring and genuine man. And I can see him taking a lot of doing as much as he can to make it as easy as it can be on you, you know.
Yeah.
And
he never missed a doctor's appointment. He took great care of me during surgery. You know, he was my note taker at appointments, you know. I married really well. I got the better end of the deal, I'm sure.
I'm sure he would say the opposite. Thank God for Spanish class, right?
That's right.
So now you hear this, you pull over, you call Jason. Jason is like, yo, woman, you're taking too long to tell me what's going on. You tell him, he is relieved.
Yes.
And so what's happening from here?
So I do still have to continue chemo after that, because there's always the chance that the PET scan can miss like microscopic cancer cells. So when you do chemo, it's like treatment throughout your body. You know, you get this medicine through your veins, and it flows through your body to kill any cancer cells anywhere in your body. Okay. So since I didn't respond to the first chemo regimen of drugs, I had a different set of drugs when I started back after surgery. And I did that for about another 3 months, and finished chemo right at the end of 2019. So December 30th, day before New Year's Eve, I got to ring the bell. Yeah.
Nice.
To signify that I was done with chemo. And then I did radiation therapy or treatment, which is like localized treatment. So chemo is throughout the body, whereas radiation is like, it's like getting an x-ray, but they point the radiation directly to the area where the cancer was. So like to me, it was like my chest wall and under my arm, and to kill any cancerous cells that may not have been taken with the surgery, may have been missed on the PET scan. So it's just like another level of insurance treatment to make sure that everything's gone.
And
So.
and then I guess it would depend upon the person whether or not, like with you go for removal of the tissue or you go for your chemo or radiate, whatever the doctors in your team see as fit, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did radiation and in Houston at MD Anderson. I chose to go there because I went there for a second opinion when I didn't respond to chemo the first time, just to make sure that, the plans that my local doctors had come up with was the right plan. And they did agree, but they strongly encouraged that I come back to Houston for radiation treatment if I could, feasibly, logistically make that happen. And so I was fortunately able to do that. One of the reasons that they recommended that I go there is obviously they think they're the best because they're, a world-renowned cancer center. And I think they're the best too. But the other reason was they said that I have a very high likelihood of a recurrence of the cancer coming back. And that example you said when we first started talking about how somebody hears that 25% one way and somebody else hears it another way. So, that was discouraging for them to tell me there's a high likelihood that you could have this again, because I'm thinking like, I just want to be done with this the first time. Let's not be talking about a next time. And so I asked the doctor, I'm like, well, what is a high likelihood? Like, what are we talking? Like, how much is that? And so he's like, probably about a 20% chance. Right. I see the look on your face. And I had the same look. I'm like, oh, 20%, that's not bad. Like that's not high in my mind, but okay. All right, you're the specialist. Yeah. So I had that optimistic, positive denial reaction to 20%. But then, the further I got through treatment towards the end, I was like, 20%, that's like 1 in 5. That is kind of high. I don't know, like
right.
The closer I got to the finish line, the more I realized how serious everything was that I had gone through. And it's quite an adjustment to shift from being a patient to being a survivor. When you're a patient, somebody's always looking at, your labs and you're going for appointments and then you're done and they're like, okay, we'll see you in 6 months. Come back, and it's like, holy hell, how do I put my life back together when I just spent the last 9 months being, seeing appointment after appointment? So it's a lot to adjust to.
Yeah, that's something that they don't tell you a lot, like I can imagine with major injuries, somebody, I don't know, their leg gets broken, they go through therapy, they're able to walk again. And then you have this, you're able to kind of adjust back, it's just walking. But this is like, well, now I have this over kind of this umbrella shadow here now, and then I realize that I'm going to ask you in just a second, what's become more important and what's become less important. And you start to realize what's a lot more important and you want to spend time there. But then always there's this, like, for the past, at least 6 months, even maybe 6-8 months, right along that. Cause I think you said it was in June that you had the official diagnosis.
It was actually 9 months in treatment.
Okay. Wow. So yeah, your life completely changed and shifted over to this new thing. And then now it's over, but it's not over, quote unquote, but there's still this chance. And it's like, well, where am I supposed to go now? You're a completely different person in certain respects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how have you been finding that kind of transition and then that rebuilding of who you are and what you're doing now?
So coincidentally, I finished treatment right as COVID was heightening. I finished on March 5th. And 10
days later, we get locked down here in
Louisiana. Yeah. So the rest of the world was going stir crazy, not knowing what to do with themselves while they were stuck at home. And I'm like, I've been doing this for 9 months. And, I'm used to living, not knowing what to do or, like living in chaos, not
in that uncertainty,
having a plan and the uncertainty. That's the word I'm looking for. So the initial COVID transition, or now that I'm a survivor and transitioning to that, it was like, oh, I don't know what all these people are talking about. I've been doing this for 9 months. Like,
you're a pro now. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. So initially it was easy, but then when it kind of settled down a month or so after being home from Houston and being done with treatment, it's a lot to adjust to, like everybody still wants to talk about it when they see you. And I don't really have much to say, anymore, because it's not like there's practical updates to share necessarily, other than celebrating the fact that I'm done. But in the back of my head, I was like terrified that I was going to have a recurrence, because nobody's, monitoring me closely anymore. It's a very overlooked part of cancer treatment. The medical field is concentrating on the treatment of the cancer itself, but like the mental health of the patients, there's a huge gap there to be filled.
And that's what I was just about to hit and ask you about, was the mental aspect of this. It's I wouldn't say it's similar, because cancer isn't necessarily similar to getting in shape, but it's very easy to, as a coach, right, to say, hey, go and do this, and here's what you need to do. But then, you meet all these blocks on the inside of your head. Well, why can't I do them? Well, it's because I believe this about this, or I'm doing this about this. You're a different person now, and breast cancer survivors are different people. You've experienced this Mack truck hitting you, and if a Mack truck hits you, you're in bed for months, and then you get up and it's like, what was the world like before getting hit? What was it like at that point? And I can see and I can understand how, now you want to live in the present, right? And since I've known you, you've been a very present person. It's never been, oh God, the weather is terrible outside, or, this thing has been bothering me for 5 months. It's like, no, I'm here. I'm present. I'm positive. Let's make the best of the situation. I remember times when we had the 4-minute plank, and you just kind of looked at it and you just had a big old smile and you're like, let's do this. And
I'm working on that now, by the way.
You're getting the plank in? Good.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Awesome. That makes me excited too. I mean, I remember seeing pictures, with feet up on a box, and the conversations that we would have, and it just having that presence, and then people wanting to keep bringing you back into, well, what was it like when you were there? And it's like, I'm not there anymore. I don't want to talk about me being there. I'm here. So I'm curious, what did you find important to yourself before all of this experience? And then what do you feel as more important in your life now? Or has that shifted? Does that make sense?
It has. I don't know if it's shifted as much as it's just more defined, but like, I'm not willing to spend my time, energy, money doing things that don't fulfill me. Ooh,
say that again for people in the back, Sarah.
It's true. I mean, I'm not gonna, like, here's an example, like a weeknight invitation to do, go to have drinks with, Facebook friends, or just not close friends. Like, I don't want to go to a big gathering where it's, surface conversations. I want to have, deep, meaningful conversations. I want to have quality time with people. I don't want to sit at a table with, 20 women and be on the opposite end of the room and just talk to the person next to me all night. I would rather be home with my husband and my kids and, go to bed early than do that.
Yep. Speaking my language right there. So there's been a big, maybe not a big shift, because you've always been that type of person to, as far as I've known you, to appreciate deeper conversation. So there's been more of that was a good way of putting it, like a refinement or a definement of what you enjoy more and what you want to do more. And would you say that you've become more forceful, isn't the right words, assertive with your time and your energy too? So if it's, yeah,
I'm very good at saying no. I don't feel like I owe people an explanation. Sorry, that doesn't work for me. Like, you don't have to say, oh, I got to do this or I got to do that. I can't make it tonight, you know?
Yep. Yep. My dad told me a little while ago, and it didn't, it hits on different levels as they grow older. But he told me, he said, Eric, I wish I would have learned this earlier, but you don't owe anybody anything. And I just stopped and I was like, what? And he goes, my dad, he said, you see these people who, he said, just the other day, somebody was holding the door for me whenever I was walking in somewhere. And I was probably a good 40 to 50 feet away from the door, yet somebody stood there with the door open waiting for me. And this is my dad's interpretation. And he said, why would that person hold the door for 40 to 50 feet when I had to walk that far? I didn't owe that person anything. He didn't owe me anything. It was kindness that was there, but he didn't feel like he had to walk any fast. Sometimes you feel like you have to walk faster if somebody's holding a door, or oh, thank you so much. You have to react a certain way.
Right.
You don't owe anybody anything. And I think that's a powerful lesson. So you've learned how to say no more. You don't, stick to what you want more and what fulfills you. Was there anything else that you've noticed kind of?
Yeah, there was one other big lesson. Before my diagnosis, I probably wouldn't have done this, but we've all experienced this to some extent or another, both ends. But, once I was diagnosed, everybody I talked to, let me know if I can do anything for you. Can I do this? And it was an open-ended statement. And I know it was well-meaning and came from a good place. But eventually I took people up on that, like before my diagnosis, I would have been like, okay, and then whatever it was that I needed help with or could have, they could have done for me, I wouldn't have asked.
Yeah.
But afterwards I'm like, well, all these people are saying, if I can help you, let me know, And so, I eventually worked up the nerve to take a few people up on that, can you watch my kids while I go out of town to Houston for doctor's appointments? Or can you bring them to soccer practice? Or, I actually set up a meal train for Jason and the boys while I was in Houston. So I was gone for 6 weeks and he was home with the boys. So if I had been home, I'm the grocery shopper and cook most of the meals and that sort of thing. And he's capable of doing those things, but he didn't have, he was going to be spread that much more thin. And we have all these people offering to do nice things for us. So I'm like, if you want to do something nice, this would help us, and I didn't, I just said, I gave practical ways that people could help, in my journal, in my CaringBridge journal. So I didn't call anyone out or anything like that, but I'm like, we've had a lot of people offer and to help. And if, here's some specific things that would help us. And if you're, interested or you feel like you can, we would be so appreciative.
Wow. So there are really a lot of lessons that have come from this. Like there's, just from what we've talked about here in the last maybe 5-10 minutes, there's the refinement of what's important and how you want to spend your time, not so much superficial, going deeper with people, getting to that more vulnerable level. There's being able to say no, which is huge. I mean, really can't place a value on how important it is to say no and to guard your energy and your thoughts when you need to. But then being able to ask for help too.
Yeah. And there's two parts to that, being able to ask for help. Like that's not easy for me to do, but I worked up the nerve to do it. And then by doing that, you're giving, others an opportunity to be a giver. And it feels so good to give, you and I know that, to bless somebody else with something. If you don't ask for help when you need it, you're denying them the opportunity to experience the blessing of blessing someone else.
Oh, that's so real. And that's so true. There's so many times where we're offered help and it's like, that means what I've seen most commonly is that means I'm weak if I accept help, or that means I'm X, Y, and Z if I accept help, or even if I ask for help, because somebody can offer and it's there. All you have to do is just say yes, I'm okay with this, but ultimately it's something that we make about ourselves, oh, I'm this way or I'm that way if I accept or if I don't accept help. So, and you're building a stronger tribe too,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like 100%. your boys are getting to meet new people, your husband's getting to meet new people, you're getting to kind of delegate, which is really hard, I would say, for anybody, especially somebody who's like in the positions that you are, right, in leadership. It's hard to delegate because what if they don't do it as well as you? So developing trust with yourself, the boys, your husband, with those that are saying, hey, I'm here to help you. Okay, well, I'm trusting you to do that. And wow, so there was a lot of growth that happened during this time period as well, you know, and yeah. Wow, that's nuts. Woo. So what an experience. So where are you at now? How would you define excellence?
I feel like excellence is probably being willing to always be a work in progress, you know, not settling for, there's no finish line to excellence.
Oh, I like that. It's not something that's ever over.
Yeah. You know, if you stop growing, then I don't know. I guess you don't want to stop growing.
Yeah. There's I'm not the biggest fan of the black and white or the either or. I'm a big fan of both and you know, like, why not, you know, if I can. So where was I going with this? Shoot, I completely forgot. That happens all the time.
Same.
But oh shoot. Oh, there can always be more options, you know. It's never just one way. There's always different ways of looking about things if we choose to and have that different perspective. So before I ask you the questions that I normally ask my guests, is there anything else that you'd like to add, or something that maybe I forgot to ask you, or we forgot to hit on as far as your story goes and like that?
I don't think so. I think I can't think of anything.
All right, cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, that works. Is your platform still up? So if somebody wants to kind of, it is, what's the URL?
CaringBridge.com, or maybe it's .org. CaringBridge is the name of the website. And then if you just search my name, Sara Delancy, you'll see my site. And I can send you a link to it.
Yeah, I would love that. So I can put it in, we'll have it in the show notes so that people can see. And, you know, we can, if they want to read about that experience, they have it. And then if anybody reaches out or wants to talk to you about where you're at.
I love talking to other survivors. It's really healing for me and for them. You know, I guess maybe that is the one part I want to add. I mean, I've met some really amazing women who've become close friends, you know, overnight, that are also survivors, because we have this, you know, in common. And, you know, as much as friends and family that haven't experienced this have been amazing support, you'll just never, until you are in this situation, you can't appreciate it the same way.
Yeah, I'm used to saying I can imagine. I can't imagine. So I would imagine that yourself. Yeah. It lets you know that you're not alone. It lets you know that, you know, there's other people who are experiencing it, and they can be there, and you can be there for them. Yeah. During that time period. And you know, like a friend, this story came up the other day. A friend of mine went to the military. He came back, you know, 3 years later. We all met for one night. And he realized that nobody in the town has changed. And once you go through an experience like this, you want to be around people who have had similar experiences, because it's a part of who you are. It's not who you are, but it's a part of who you are now and that you've been through. So I totally get that. So CaringBridge, search for your name. I'll, of course, if anybody wants to reach out, I'll have Sarah's email. You can reach out to her. And okay, so some of these questions, these are good questions. So the first one I mentioned to you, I know it's.
Uh-oh, I lost you.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Yeah, I muted myself. Okay. Yeah. Take as long as you need to. So the first one is, what advice would you give a smart, driven college student about to enter the real world? What advice should they ignore?
Okay, so I guess my answer is actually both. It's the what to do and what not to do. I feel like when you're, you know, in your early 20s and you're fresh out of college, the world sets these expectations on you, you know, like get married, buy a car, buy a house, buy furniture. There's, status symbols or benchmarks that you have to check off to measure success. I don't think any of that really matters. I think that's a great way. And don't do that by going into debt, because it's so easy to do. So don't do those things, and don't let others, because obviously people ask you that all the time. Like, as soon as you graduate, what are you going to do? Where are you going to live?
Why don't you have your whole life thought out already?
Right.
Just out of college, you're early 20s, late teens. Come on, man. What's
yeah.
up?
So don't let that keep you up at night. So don't do those things, but also don't worry about what other people think. I mean, it's your life. Live it, the way that you intend to, not the way the rest of the world thinks you should.
And I've noticed over time too that it hits on a different level, like at 20 you think so, and you're fresh out of college and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to live the way that I want to. And then you kind of, at least from my experience, you kind of get caught up in the keeping up with the Joneses, what's the American dream. And then you have these breakout moments where you're like, oh no. And what I've been told is like the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s are where you really, we allow that to marinate, where it really doesn't matter what other people think. It really does, like you're taken care of. You're at the point where you may have a family, you may not, whatever, but we're pretty solid on who we are as we grow older, and how important that is to be influenced, but allow those who influence, allow yourself to choose who influences you rather than everybody.
Absolutely.
All right, sweet. So that was a good one. What's an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
Two immediately come to mind. I'm an awful Facebook junkie. I mean, I'm not proud of it. I'm really not. It's a total waste of time, but I just look at it all the time.
Me too.
Yeah. And then one other bad habit, that's a new bad habit, but I am addicted to Bluebell confetti cake ice cream.
Ooh.
Like, I am ashamed. I can't even keep it in the house. Like, it's just not good. And I would love ice cream, but I don't usually buy it. And then I got introduced to it during COVID, and not good.
You got to watch out, especially being in the house. Boredom takes over.
Yes.
I recently rediscovered zebra cake rolls and zebra cakes, like little nephews.
Yes.
Oh man, I can't keep it in the house. I'm like you. I can't keep it in the house. If it's there, it's done.
Yeah.
I like that. That's pretty cool. Bluebell confetti ice cream. Is that what it is? That's what
confetti cake ice cream.
Confetti cake. Okay, I'm gonna have to try that. Probably not a good thing to try, but
okay.
It's so good. All right, so I have maybe 2 or 3 more. I think this would be a good one. In the past 5 years, what new belief, behavior, has improved your life?
Right around my 40th birthday, I really stopped saying yes to, things I didn't want to say yes to, and, letting go of other people, living my life by what I thought other people thought I should be doing. So, I'm 42. And so, in the last 5 years, I've really refined that and honed that in. But I felt like going into my 40th birthday, I was like really starting to like shed that care, opinion of what other people thought of me or thought I should be doing.
Yeah, totally. And I would imagine it's a pretty freeing experience, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So kind of like you didn't know you had the elephant, like you mentioned earlier. You didn't know you had the elephant sitting on your chest, and then it sits, it stands up, and you're like, oh my God, what is this? That kind of,
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, just two more. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused or have lost your focus temporarily, what do you do?
Ooh. Well, I have ADHD, so I'm very familiar with this.
Ooh, nice. All right.
I have to get up and like take a short walk or go outside and get fresh air and like just kind of reset, instead of like powering through whatever I'm trying to do. I have to just like take a pause, hit the reset button and come back to whatever I'm trying to do a few minutes later. Can't be too long.
Yeah.
It's just got to be a defined 10 minutes. Sometimes, like, I work from home, so sometimes if I'm feeling that come on, I'll go get the mail, or I'll go outside and water the plants, or walk to the end of the street and back. So
yeah, that's a really good way to do things. Kind of get your mind off of what's going on, refocus, something it can be creative, physical activity, something gets your blood flowing again and then allows you to refocus on task. I like that. That's really good. And I'm glad that you found that effective too with ADHD, because I'll probably take you up.
Yeah. Well, you would appreciate this, and even other people that work from home. But, since I'm working from home, I used to commute to Metairie for work, but since COVID, I've been working from home. So I used to have this 45 minutes to an hour in the car, every day to and from work. And then once I was working from home, I loved having that time back, not commuting, but like I needed to figure out what I could do to have my brain and my body know it's time to sit down and work, other than just sitting my butt in the chair. So I get up and walk most mornings. It's not a real cardio blasting walk, but 30, 40 minutes, something like that. Yeah. And take a shower and then sit in the chair. So it's kind of like that's the time I would have commuted to work. And so having gotten my blood flow, showered, putting on shoes, and sitting on the desk is like I'm physically and mentally ready to work once I've done those things.
That's huge. That is so huge. One of my business coach, Craig, he talks about how important routine is and how COVID's really knocked everybody off. We're going to probably see another few hectic months here as far as like gym owners go and different businesses. And the one thing that he said is stick to your routine. Go to bed at a certain time, wake up at that same time every single day. Do your best to keep your routine in place, because and I think you're pretty rare for this, you've learned how to thrive in uncertainty and chaos, as you mentioned earlier. For most people, uncertainty and chaos is not cool. And I say that in the sense of they become frazzled and scattered and kind of you get lost, and your attention can go in different places with people that aren't quite as supportive as you need. So having that routine in place is like, it just lets you stay on track and it lets you stay focused, and you're getting healthier. You're not sitting down, you're able to move and all that kind of stuff. So that's huge. That's awesome. All right. So here's the big one. This is my favorite question. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, getting your message out to millions or billions, what would it say and why? If it's helpful, it can be someone else's quote, but it doesn't have to be. What you got?
Okay, so off the cuff, I have two things. So, first my immediate was like, okay, it's going to be Matthew 5:16, be the light, right? And then like my other immediate off the cuff was let that shit go.
Let that shit go. Both of those.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I don't know, kind of contradictory, swearing and then scripture, but that's who I am. I'm a mixture of all of the above.
Well, hey, Jesus went into the temple and he overturned tables and he caused quite a ruckus from what he saw. So I would say if you're following Christ, you got to be a little bit of a rebel. So, standing on the mountaintop and telling people, let that shit go. That might be the modern words of our Lord and Savior. Who knows? Yeah. So, wow, that was awesome. This was great. I appreciate you so much for coming on. Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that I forgot about that you'd like to mention or say before we cut it off?
Yeah, just one thing. Mm-hmm. You're unstoppable.
Oh, man. That was well placed. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am. And Sarah, let me tell you, my friend, I'm going to put in a word that people love, but people hate to hear too, because it's kind of jarring. You are fucking unstoppable, Sarah.
Oh, I love the F word. So yes.
I'm a big fan of it too. So I appreciate you coming on. I hope to have you as a guest again in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This was great. And stick around just for a second, and I think that's
Sure.
it. So
Okay.
y'all that are listening, if you want to reach out to Sara, I'll have the email in the show notes if you want to check out her platform, CaringBridges. You search her name, we'll have that link in the show notes as well. And yeah, we thank you for listening. We appreciate it. And then Sara, could you tell our audience what you just told me?
You're unstoppable.
You're unstoppable, baby. I hope you have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.